was the summer of 2014, and for my son's bar mitzvah present, just like many Jewish parents, we wanted him to bond with the Holy Land. Oh, it worked perhaps too well. My husband had stayed back at the hotel, and our friends, my son and I, had just stopped in a pharmacy.
Run to the bomb shelter, sweetie. Please hurry. I didn't hear the sirens at first, but the Israelis did. They're used to hearing these things. We ran to the back of the storeroom. It was a 12-foot by 24-foot windowless bomb shelter. My heart's pounding. Boom! Boom! I hear it and feel the percussion of the exploding bombs. I'm trying not to get sick. I look at my 13-year-old son and I think I'll never forgive myself if something happens to him.
That's an excerpt from a speech I gave to the Orange County Jewish Bar Association. It was the first, but not the last time we had to run to a bomb shelter. Our adventure and my transformation is also the subject of my book, Blasted from Complacency, A Journey from Terror to Transformation in Israel. There is no chapter in a parenting book on what to do when a war starts and you're on a family vacation. Think touring extraordinary and sacred sites mixed with cowering in bomb shelters. I'm still trying to get over the Jewish guilt of taking my son to war for his bar mitzvah present. The impact of being human targets helped me understand the plight of Israelis living like this, and it also made me want to work on peace. How Israel is often described on the news is not what I'd seen with my own eyes. And I felt Palestinian parents also preferred their children playing safely in their backyards. The missiles exploded just near enough to blow apart my world as I knew it, forever changing me. And you'd never recognize my life today with what it was like then. I believe I found my life's purpose. Hello, I'm Penny ST, and I'm the host of Peace with Penny. In today's episode of Peace with Penny, we have the pleasure of speaking with Yehuda Stolov of Interfaith Encounter Association, or IEA. The IEA provides hope and works to build bridges between Jews, Muslims, Christians, and others based on tradition and culture without any political agenda. The IEA was founded 21 years ago, has 119 groups, hosts 4,300 events and encounters, and has 4,000 people participate each year. From the Upper Galilee to Eilat, are you surprised to hear that Israelis and West Bank Palestinians meet on a regular basis? Within the groups, participants have meaningful exchanges which bring them closer to each other. Prejudice, hostility, and suspicion are transformed into direct relationships, mutual respect, and friendships. Dr. Yehuda Stolov is the executive director of the Interfaith Encounter Association. He has lectured on the role of religious dialogue and peace building throughout the world, including Jordan, India, Indonesia, Turkey, South Korea, North America, and Europe. He also has published many papers on related issues. In 2006, he was awarded the Immortal Chaplains Foundation Prize for Humanity, which honors those who risked all to protect others of a different faith or ethnic origin. And in 2015, he was awarded the IIE Victor J. Goldberg Prize for Peace in the Middle East. Dr. Stolov was a member of the International Council of the International Association for Religious Freedom and a member of the steering committee for the United Nations Decade of Interreligious Dialogue and Cooperation for Peace. He holds a bachelor's and master's of science in physics and a PhD from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He's married and father of 3 children. We always have to get that in there, living in Jerusalem. It's safe to say he's a busy man. Welcome, Yehuda.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's a pleasure being with you today.
I just love this program. How would you describe Interfaith Encounter Association?
So, Interfaith Encounter Association is an organization that builds a social movement of change that is organized around groups that bring together neighboring communities for sustained dialogue between them. And the dialogue is focused on interfaith exchange because this platform is especially effective in getting to know each other in a deep way, in uh, learning that we have many commonalities, and maybe more important, to be able to discuss differences in a constructive way that makes the conversation more interesting and doesn't threaten the conversation, because this is what allows us to train ourselves to develop friendships with people we disagree with, which is the real challenge we are facing here.
Before we go much further, I'd like to play a clip as an overview.
For as long as most people alive today can remember, there has never been a lasting peace in the Middle East. For almost 2 decades, the Interfaith Encounter Association has been dedicated to promoting peace in the Middle East through interfaith dialogue.
We've got to somehow figure out a way to have two populations that are willing to live with each other. And the only way to do that is to get everybody involved. So what we try to do is say that, well, if religion has been part of the problem, then it's got to also be part of the solution.
The IEA maintains dozens of ongoing encounter groups from Eilat to Eilat. These include women's groups, religious groups, educators, healthcare professionals, youth, teen, young adults, and many more.
Our aim is, one, to bring as many as we can of people from different confessions, religions, to sit together in a respectful and peaceful atmosphere to discuss in a peaceful way and a respectful way.
I do this for my kids, my children, not for myself.
And once you get the chance to meet a group, even a small group of 5 or 10 people from the other community, and you have a real conversation with them, this experience changes your the way you relate to the other.
Our vision is of a society in which the otherness of the other is not only accepted, but truly understood and respected.
How many groups do you have?
So we established until now 119 groups from the Upper Galilee to Eilat, not including some groups abroad. Groups in the Holy Land. 16 of those groups were working for more than 10 years. So half of these 16 stopped their work after 10 or 12 or 15 years. And half of them are still working. The oldest working group that we have is working for more than 19 years.
Wow. And why did the group stop?
Different reasons. We had a group in Eilat that worked for, I think, 12 years, and a key person left Eilat to the north, and the group fell apart. There was another group that was working in Jerusalem for 12 years of Arabic-speaking people, mostly educators, and then again the key person retired and started working more with his grandchildren than with the group.
So you have groups that are Israelis and Palestinians together, but also groups that are separate?
No, we have, all groups are mixed.
Oh, okay.
And nearly all groups include Jews and Muslims. But some of them might be Israeli citizens within the Green Line. Some of them would be Israelis and Palestinians from the West Bank. And because we are very strictly apolitical, we also have groups of settlers and Palestinians. Because we don't discuss issues like the historical narratives or what should be the solution. We see our work as building the foundation on which on which no solution can work without it. So if the people on the ground do not have good relations, do not have good intercommunal relations, then sooner or later any arrangement will fall like the Oslo process. So building these intercommunal relations on the ground is essential for any political solution. People, I think, understand that, and therefore they participate happily in this process. And I think, I mean, it's also, I mean, the conversations are not only effective in changing people's minds, they're also joyful, and they're interesting. It's nice. The human interaction is not only educational; it's also fun. Um,
What types of groups are there? I mean, I believe there's women's groups and what are um, bringing them together? Are there certain types of groups?
yeah, yeah, and this is constantly evolving because someone comes with an idea. Let's start a group like this, and I said, why not? And we work to start it. So we have, I mean, groups bring together neighboring communities. That's the title. But neighboring
Right.
communities first can be people who live not far from one another. It can be people who study in the same university or college. It can be people who work in the same place. It can be people
Mhm.
who share an interest or vocation. So this is one how do you say spectrum that
Mhm.
you can
So can
get
you give some
diversity.
examples? Like, I don't know, do you have people who, I mean, women who like to cook together? I don't know.
We don't have
Give
that
some,
yet. We had an
give
idea
some
like this. It
examples.
didn't mature,
Uh-huh.
but we have, for example, people who live in Jerusalem or in Haifa or in
Mhm.
Jaffa, and or people who live Israelis who live in Jerusalem and Palestinians who live in Bethlehem or in Ramallah. So this is a kind of geographical lines. Then you
Mhm.
have people who are, I mean, there are groups that are open for everyone. That
Mhm.
sometimes they get young people, but they tend to get people more, let's say, in the 30s, 40s, and up.
Mhm.
So you also have groups for young adults and
Mhm.
groups for teenagers. We also had one group in the past for primary school children.
Oh, how
Uh,
cool.
yeah. And then you have groups for women, or
Mhm.
groups for educators, or groups for religious leaders,
Mhm.
community level religious leaders, high level religious leaders. What else did we have? We have a group of musicians. We had another one in the
Ah,
past, and they're actually a band. They have like a repertoire for a whole
how
performance.
fun.
Yeah, and they sing in Hebrew and Arabic, and they sing nicely, I think. I mean, you can
Mhm.
find the clips on our YouTube channel.
It, I assume the band has a name. What is it?
Waste Tariq, Emtza Derech in Hebrew, in English, middle of the road.
How very cool. I'll have
Yeah,
to look them up.
yeah.
So I know men and women are in many groups, but how do you handle that with the more traditional people who believe more traditionally?
Yeah, so with traditional people, I mean, women sometimes, even if they're not so traditional, they prefer to be with other women only.
Yeah.
Uh, but also, the traditional factor is also there, and so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have to have groups for women only.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't yet have, I mean, there are groups that are men only de facto, but we didn't have a group that is defined as for men only. But we are working on a group for ultra-Orthodox Jews, and this will be men only. Maybe there will be another women only parallel group. And the same when you work especially with the Bedouins, it's either men only or women only.
Hmm. So, how did COVID impact your groups?
Dramatically. I mean, less dramatically than we thought, but many of the groups stopped their activity. Less than half the groups were able to move to Zoom for various reasons. There were Palestinians who were afraid that someone will take a screenshot and they will get into trouble. There were people who didn't have good internet connection or not good enough computers.
Mm,
So many groups could not make this transition. We
mm,
are now reviving
mm-hmm,
many of those groups. There were also another type of groups that did meet were 3 or 4 groups that met face to face, but
mm-hmm,
not on Zoom, between waves of the pandemic. So when
mm,
it was a little bit less, they went to the woods or to the park or to an open
mm-hmm.
place and met.
Oh man, pandemics have a way of getting in the way, that's for sure. So,
Hopefully, we will not experience another one for another
oh,
100
I'm
years or so.
really, it's really been an experience. However, I think in much communication throughout the world, it has had some opportunities because people did go online, and the use of Zoom, for instance, obviously
Yes.
has really connected people.
Yeah, if you would ask me a few years back if it is possible to run a group on Zoom, I would say never.
Hmm.
And now we have 1 or 2 groups that remain on Zoom, even though they can meet physically.
Yeah.
And
What?
also, Zoom allows people from abroad to
Right.
join encounters.
Right. That's
So we
that's
had
what I meant.
this
Yeah.
this group that meets for 19 years.
Uh-huh.
Um, one of the founders of the group
Yes.
is a nun from originally from Malta who was here for many years, but then she retired and went back to Europe. And suddenly she could join back the encounters. So it was
Mm-hmm.
very
Yeah, this gives me an idea. Do any of the groups meet in English?
yes,
Because, I'd love to attend and kind of hear, you know, what goes on,
yeah,
I
you're
mean,
most welcome.
that we'll have to offline. You have to hook me up. That sounds
Okay,
really
okay,
cool.
okay,
Really
I will.
cool.
I will. Also, maybe, I mean, maybe there will be a group coming up in your backyard. I mean, we have
Oh,
someone who used to be our coordinator, a
yeah.
Palestinian from Nablus. He now lives in LA, and he always says,
Oh,
"Let's start a group there. Let's start a group there." So maybe it will happen.
cool. That would be really cool. I would be very interested in knowing about that. Who is the leadership of the Interfaith Encounter Association?
The way we designed the organization, we had some consultation in the beginning, and we changed it a little bit. Um, but the way it is designed, the highest body is the General Assembly, and the General Assembly includes only people who have responsibilities within the organization. So mostly groups coordinators, but also the paid staff, which is very small.
Hmm.
Or some people who who are not necessarily group coordinators, but are leading this or that project, which is usually their own initiative. So that's the highest body. They elect every 2 years from within the General Assembly. They they elect the board. The board has potentially 8 seats, but only it has 2 seats for each religion: for Jews, for Muslims, for Christians, for Druze. Um, right now, we don't have any Druze coordinators, so we don't have any Druze on the board. We have a few Christian coordinators, but only one submitted candidacy for the elections. So right now we have 2 Jews, 2 Muslims, and 1 Christian. The board meets every other month to supervise the work of the paid staff and to give consultation. It's not we don't have like a distant hierarchy. We're all working together. And sometimes we have questions to ask them, and we do, and they give, it's more like giving advice than like coming from the top. And in a way, there is some kind of round nature in this hierarchy because as the general, the executive director, I am the boss of these coordinators. So it's kind of round, and we did it on purpose. So it will be more relaxed, and it is, which is something that I'm very grateful for.
How do the interfaith communities become involved?
Involved in what in the
In your
how they come they
in the
become active.
groups? Yeah. In
So it's always it always starts from at least one, sometimes a few people who want to do something. Usually they don't know what they want to do, but if they talk to me, I explain to them that what they really want is to be coordinators of a group and to invite their friends to join and to create this ongoing conversations between them and their neighbors.
because Israelis and Palestinians don't speak the same language in general, how do you deal with that? Are you talking in English mostly
Depends on the
or
group. Some groups have in both communities people who speak good English, and they would prefer to speak English. In some groups, the the better common language will be Hebrew. In both cases, nearly always there will be a need for translation, because even if most people speak English, not all of them. So there will be translation which slows the conversation. But this again is a conscious decision that we don't want to limit the conversation only to those who know English. So we at the first the I mean at the first step we include everyone. We invite everyone to join. Then we see what language will work, and the conversation is slower, but it is happening.
you mentioned that there were some college campus groups. Can you talk a little
Yes,
bit about that?
yes. So we had in the past, I don't remember how many, maybe around 10 groups that were working in different colleges and campuses. Right now we have three active groups in one in the Hebrew University at the School of Nursing,
Hmm.
one at Bar Ilan University, which is actually has 2 branches because one of them is like a more intensive program, and then we have like a kind of an alumni group for those who graduated from this intensive program that also gives credit. And then we have in the interdisciplinary center in Herzliya, the Reichman University. We had for many years at the Hebrew University in Mount Scopus campus. Right now it's not active, but we are looking for ways to revive it. We have a few people now that hopefully will. We had in the past in Haifa University, in David Yelin's Teachers College, in Sakhnin College, where else? 2 or 3 other colleges.
Do they take on a different flavor than, I would imagine people of that age group. I mean, do they also attend activities together?
Yes, I
Do
mean,
you
but
find?
this is not limited to young people.
Hmm.
Um, you find in many groups people invite each others for happy occasions, for sad occasions. Sometimes people go out for coffee or decide as a group to go to nature somewhere, or to visit a museum, or even to do some social activity. For example, we had a group of women in Jerusalem that in which one of the participants was a teacher. She told the group how the school is not well preserved, so they got together and then they went and painted the school.
Cool.
We had a group in the Lower Galilee that was working with the local community center, and before each holiday, they would come together and prepare packages and deliver them to poor people of this community who was celebrating this holiday. We even once had an attempt for a business venture. It was a
Oh,
group of
wow.
young people from the Hebrew University and Bethlehem University, Israelis and Palestinians, and they were trying to market Palestinian olive oil into
Hmm.
Israeli markets.
That's really
So I
interesting.
mean, the main thing that we do is build these intercommunal relationships and
Hmm.
make it vivid and caring and friendly. And when people are friends and they come together, they many things arise from these growing relationships.
What's the atmosphere at first, and I mean, is there kind of a pattern that you've seen over the years of the development of the group, the relationships?
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between the first or two, three first encounters, depending on the group, and later on, because
Mhm.
in the first encounter or a few encounters, this is where the basis for the relations is formed. This is when
Mhm.
people who come, I mean, most of the people who come to us have never met the other before, so they come
Mhm.
anxious, sometimes excited, but sometimes
Mhm.
anxious. They come with prejudices, and in the first few encounters, these prejudices break. Uh, you can see that more dramatically if suddenly a wave of violence erupts.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
if the group had only one encounter before, this wave of violence may destroy the group. But if it had like 3 or 4 encounters, even if they need to stop because I don't know, there are roadblocks or I don't know
Mhm.
what, they will come together later on.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was doing Hands of Peace, I did a 4-part series, and the kids, they're high school kids, and they had spent um, time 3 weeks usually in a summer camp together.
Mhm.
Israelis, Palestinians, both from the West Bank, and PCIs, or Palestinian citizens of Israel, and American kids, and they went home, and then those just this past summer, and things started happening, and the bond that they had created, they called each other, and are you
Mhm.
okay, and so on.
Yeah.
It's quite beautiful when they just need to meet.
Yes.
They live right next to each other, but
Yes.
far too often, as you said, it's the first time they actually meet in a way where they socialize.
Yes. Yes.
And
Absolutely.
it's pretty sad. And it's, on one hand, it's very sad. And on the other hand, once you see this repeatedly, it makes you feel that the solution is much more simple than
Yes.
most people would imagine,
Yes. Yes.
because they have all these uh, based on all the propaganda, and also based on reality, when they see, people can be killed, etc., on both sides. It impacts people, and develop their prejudices, and you can't blame them, but it's hard to get past that, and you start believing that, many of them, don't necessarily believe the other is human.
Yeah.
It's for people like, say, Americans who don't live like this, it's hard to imagine, but when you're dealing with two peoples that are basically PTSD,
Yeah.
living with
Yeah.
traumatic stress all the time, it creates a whole level of psychology that, thankfully most of the world doesn't have to live with, but it's hard to understand at times. What do you consider your greatest accomplishments
Surviving.
after
I
21
mean,
years, huh?
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's it's a constant struggle every year. I don't know where will I find the funds to cover all of that.
Yeah, you've got
And
quite a large budget.
it's not so big, around $150,000. I think it's not considered very
I'd
big,
take it.
but it's very hard to raise it,
Yes, I'm
and
sure.
we're all constantly looking for financial partners who will be part of the process in this way. Uh,
What type of financial partners do you have?
anyone, anyone, anyone.
So do you have individuals and corporations, or
Yeah, yeah,
all
and
different types?
I mean, most of our budget comes from foundation grants. Um, but then beyond surviving, I think that the fact that our activity grows all the time, that
Mhm.
the diversity grows all the time, that the outreach is unparalleled. I mean, we just had elections last Tuesdays. We have people who
Right.
voted for all parties who participated. And this is an achievement because many organizations they would say that are apolitical. Yes, they would be welcoming for people who come from all parts of the political spectrum, but people usually don't go. And to
Right.
us, they do come because I think we are so strict on being apolitical. And this means
So
that
it's apolitical.
apolitical, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, my Israeli pronunciation.
Yes, I
Yeah,
just I just wanted to be clear for us,
yeah.
American English speakers,
Yeah.
that you're
So,
saying that
so in this,
you don't talk politics.
no, and in this sense, our 4,000 people a year are much more than many other organizations because they really represent the whole political spectrum in Israel and in the Palestinian society. So you have, I mean, they're all how do you say, like change agents in
Hmm.
societies, in parts of the society that are not often reached by other organizations.
Right, right. Like having settlers and
Yeah,
Palestinians meeting,
yes,
like in Roots.
yes, yes. We have some cooperation with Roots, but we have people who are more would who are labeled more extreme than the Roots people.
Yeah. Yeah, could you talk a little bit about that? That's Haredi and
Already we don't have. I mean, we have a few
mhm.
individuals, not so much mainstream. I mean,
Mm.
that's a weak point to improve. Also, we don't have.
So who are these folks who are even more, I don't know, would they be considered more religious, more right wing?
I mean,
What kind of folks are you talking about?
perhaps the most surprising group that we have is a group in Hebron, and this group includes settlers from Hebron and Palestinians from Hebron. And ask anyone, both among the Israelis and among the Palestinians, about the Hebronites, they will tell you that these are the most extreme people. But
Can you, for our viewers who never been to Israel, don't know what you're talking about. Could you explain why that is? What
I,
what
I mean,
Hebron is a city that is what? Comprised of what?
so I mean, among the Palestinian cities in the West Bank, Hebron is the only one that has a Jewish neighborhood within it.
So it's a
Um,
mixed city.
it's not really a mixed city because there's clear separation between the
Okay.
Jewish part and the Muslim part. Um, but they live in very close proximity,
Okay.
closer than other places. And for some reason, I don't know, I mean, I don't know why, but for some reason, there are people who are more dedicated, or I don't know how to say it because I mean, they're labeled as extreme and like like very often and like in other cases, when you get to know them, you see that there are people. You know, there was
Right.
I there's a nice quote that I like to quote. I mean, 2 years I think before he died, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs gave a TED talk that was one of the 10 most viewed TED talks at that
Mm,
year, and it was about encouraging people to meet people who are not like them. And he had like a very nice line there. He said, when you meet people who are not like you discover that there are people like you.
right.
And it captures, I think, the process that happens. And this process is not only when an Israeli meets Palestinian. It's
Mm-hmm.
also when someone who defines themselves as liberal and
Mm-hmm.
he meets someone from his own religion or his own people who is considered like a fundamentalist or a moderate and an extreme or whoever. When you meet
Mm-hmm.
people, you discover that there are people. And they may have their own opinions, which you may disagree with, but there are people, you can work with them, you can relate to them, you can build relations with them, and then they are less extreme because they have met you.
Right. Right. So, what are some cool stories that you've been told about from the various groups that have happened over the years from meeting one another?
So, I mean, maybe something that is not even one story, it's a story that repeated itself 10 times or 11 times even. Uh, in the early years, during when the Intifada was still active, because we started organization in the summer of 2001 when the
Mhm.
Intifada, the second Intifada, was 10 months active. But for until early 2005, for 3 years of our activity, it was very much active, and we had a grant from the European Union to hold Israeli-Palestinian retreats. And we had 12 of those. And 11 of those were during this time of the Intifada. And you could see, we used to start on Thursday afternoon. You could see two very separate groups sitting on different tables when this first supper happened. And then you could physically see them mixing more and more and more. And on Friday evening, we used to have a social evening, and you could see them singing together, dancing together, telling jokes with each other. And then when the time came on Saturday to farewell, you could see them hugging each other and exchanging phone numbers or email addresses and so on, keeping in touch later on. And I say, yes, I mean, which is also a reflection of what you said before. Um, it is an illustration of how effective our model is. But I think it says more than that. It says, I mean, if you can achieve such transformation within less than 48 hours, at the height of the Intifada, it means that the animosity is not as high as it looks. And it's mostly, I would say, some kind of historical accident that we disconnected and developed all these prejudices about the other. And when we get the chance to get to know each other firsthand, to look each other in the eye, magic happens. So this is maybe one type of story that repeats itself again and again. Another similar story was a group that we have that brings together Jews from the south of Jerusalem, Muslims from a village near Hebron, and sometimes Christians from Bethlehem. They meet, I think, for 13 years or something like that. And a few years ago, the coordinator of the group has in his synagogue someone who is very close to him, and he tried for a long time to convince him to try out one of the encounters. And they were used to be at that time. They used to meet in a small hotel at the outskirts of Bejala, which is very near to Jerusalem. And finally convince him to join, and are driving up the hill on the direction. And before you reach the hotel, you pass 3 or 4 houses of Bejala. When they reach this point, he stops the car and he turns around to the other guy and says, "Give me one reason why I should turn around and go back home." The coordinator thinks for a minute and he gives him, I think, a brilliant answer. He says, "Because if you continue, you can then say that what you think about them is correct." The guy was obviously very prejudiced and fearful. And he continued. It was like maybe 1 minute drive that remained. He joined the encounter and he never stopped coming. And this again is something that happens.
Wow,
And
that's really cool. Can you talk about, I mean, you have all these events too, the different holidays, etc. Can you talk about those type of events that you have?
so we have 3 times a year, we have events to which we invite members of all the groups, plus other people who are interested. The longest happening event is the annual iftar that we are holding during Ramadan. There were many years that we had also a Jewish fast during this month, and so we broke both fasts together. But in the last few years, we don't have a joint fast, but still we hold it. And it's a nice event, no special program, just some blessing in the beginning, good food and good company, and people talk to each other, and so that's this type of event.
Can you talk
Uh,
about the iftar, exactly what that is and what happens, etc.?
the iftar is celebrated every year, every day during the 30 days of the month of Ramadan, during which Muslims fast from dawn to dusk, and they break the fast in a kind of a festive meal that is called iftar. Um, the Jews still can enjoy the iftar even if they didn't fast during the day, or the Christians. So this is one type of event.
And so how big is the event, or do
Well,
all the
usually
groups hold it
all
separately?
all the events we get between, let's say, 60 to 120 people, which is a small percentage of all the participants that we have, but we hold it in the center, which is Jerusalem. And for many groups, it's very, very far to travel.
And so what's going on at the event? can you describe it?
So as I said, I mean, there's no much program. People sit together, eat together. Of course, they talk to each other and they get to know new people.
So there are
Often,
Israelis, Jewish Israelis, and Palestinians having a meal together,
yes,
celebrating a Muslim holiday or a
yes,
Muslim. Yeah, I
uh,
guess it's called a holiday. I mean, it's Ramadan, but it's
yes,
a religious celebration after fasting all day.
yes. But I mean, it's also social, right?
Yeah.
And those who are not Muslim join the social part of it.
What's
Uh,
the Day of Interfaith in September, I believe that.
yeah, that's the second annual event. Just we invented it, but we celebrate every year around September
Mm-hmm.
the Day of Interfaith Encounter, into which first we invite people from all the groups. With the Then we have some program, we have some guiding questions. The idea is that people sit with people from other groups, not the people that they already know, and they learn. They get to know other people, but they also get to know how other groups work. It's also an
Yeah.
opportunity for people who are interested and never had the chance to join a group to see how various groups work, because the methodology is one methodology. When I describe it in the same way. When it's written in the coordinators manual, everyone gets the same document, but
Mhm.
every group is different. Every group
Right.
has its own way of realizing the methodology, which is great, because they have the ability to adapt it to their own interests and nature, and what they like to discuss, how they like to discuss.
Mm-hmm. Is anything being planned for December between Christmas and Hanukkah, and do you have special
Yes,
celebrations
yes,
during
yes.
that time?
That's the third annual event is now, I would say, being shaped. We held it only twice. It was an initiative by some Christian participants and coordinators. They said the I mean the inspiration comes from the tradition of choral singing before Christmas. And they said, let's organize something like that. So we thought a little bit, and we said, of course, it cannot be only Christmas songs, but it can be, and it is an event of, we called it interfaith singing evening. And usually the band, this music group,
Mhm.
is providing the music. And we sing different songs, naturally Hanukkah songs and
Mhm.
Christmas songs,
Mhm.
and songs from the Muslim tradition that relate to special days that are in the area. For a few years, it was Maulad Nabi, the Prophet Muhammad's birthday. So there are special songs related to that. And on top of that, we have other songs that I mean, in the first such event, we had a famous song in Hebrew, Erev Shel Shoshanim, sung of course, in Hebrew and Arabic, and also in English, and also in French, and also in Finnish.
Hmm.
So it was very nice.
What is your program that's called Global Learning Through Digital Stories?
This was a 1 year project that we did together with organizations from Hungary and from the UK. We developed, we learned ourselves, and we developed some learning tools for the use of stories in interfaith exchanges. And I mean, the materials are online, people can enjoy them, but there are no special activities
Hmm.
related anymore. So there was the process of 1 year of creating all these tools.
You have some programs where Hungary or the UK or other Euro Mediterranean region countries get involved. What are those about?
We had. I mean, this is
Those
heavily
full
depending on funding,
programs.
so it is limited. We had for maybe 10 years, or 11 years, we had first it was what we call the Middle East Abrahamic Forum. Organizations from various parts of the Middle East who combine in some way religion and social activity coming together. And we did that for 7 or 8 times, usually in Jordan, and it was really great. We learned a lot from each other. We had many ideas for follow-up programs, but again, it was we didn't find the funding. Then we did get the funding from the Anna Lindh Foundation for 2 additional gatherings that we called the Euro-Mediterranean Abrahamic Forum. We had one in Amman, Jordan, and one in Lublin, Poland. Again, very special, very moving. We had, I think, for the first time ever, we had in 2011 a visit to the Majdanek camp of a mixed group of Israelis, Palestinians, Jordanians, Egyptians, Lebanese, Moroccans.
And what is the
Majdanek is a camp, concentration camp that was established by the Nazis near
yes.
Lublin. It's walking distance. I mean, the poor people who were brought there were marching from the train station 3 kilometers to get there.
Oy, oy.
Yeah. And we had a very moving ceremony. There's a huge pile of human ashes there, and we had there a very moving ceremony with a Polish Catholic priest, an American rabbi, and a Palestinian sheikh.
My goodness.
So this was a very, very special event, but unfortunately, we didn't find the funding to continue.
Did you have it videoed?
No.
Recorded? Oh.
No. We have photos,
what a shame.
but not video.
What a
Yes.
shame.
Yes.
Can you describe Operation Chametz?
Operation Chametz is something that we are doing for many, many years. On Pesach, Jews do not eat leavened products, and not only do not eat, they cannot have them within their possession. So and usually what people do is either they sell them or they burn them. What we do is come to people or invite people to, instead of burning them, to give them to non-Jewish poor people.
Right.
So it is a very special time of the year where even the person who is, the Jewish person at least, who is totally not interested in anything that is not Jewish, in this time of year, he is interested to find a non-Jew to give him his bread or pasta or whatever. And it's always nice. It's always depending on the intensity. Sometimes we collect more, sometimes we collect less, but it's always nice. And also poor people who are Muslim or Christian, and they know that they get something from the Jews, is again a very special experience for them.
Yeah. Well, I always like to learn a little bit about the people who do this work, because being a peace activist or trying to get folks to work together and move this forward into more peaceful activities, it's not an easy gig.
Yeah.
So why did you found the Interfaith Encounter Association?
So I think it comes from my own experience for me, but I found others who had similar experience. For me, I grew up in Tel Aviv, not near Jaffa, so I never met anyone who is not Jewish, and I never thought
Yeah,
about having.
I knew that, and just being in the diaspora, being um, usually in a situation where we're the minority, it's such a different frame of reference. Can you
Yes,
just give a
yes,
little bit more to that? Because, you know, Jews who live outside of Israel, the thought in general, I know there are places where there's lots of Jews, but in general, most of us don't live in an area like that. I mean, at Temple, obviously there are Jews, but not everybody's affiliated. So what is that like living in an area where everybody's Jewish?
yes.
It's hard for me to comprehend.
Right, right. But for me, I mean, that's the natural thing because I was born in
Hmm.
Tel Aviv,
Hmm.
and I always, I mean, for me, I was given that everyone
Hmm.
around me is Jewish,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I maybe saw some Arabs when I went to Jaffa, but otherwise I didn't even see non-Jews. Maybe sometimes tourists or yeah. So I know. I mean, for people who live, for Jews who live in the diaspora, it's a very strange thing.
Yeah.
But for me, it's natural. So I grew up without speaking to anyone who is not Jewish until I was. I mean, in the university, I met some, and I was nice to them, but we never became friends.
Hmm.
Until I was around 30 years old or a little bit more, I never had a real conversation with anyone who is not Jewish.
Wow.
And I was interested in other religions,
Hmm.
but I either read a book or took a class in the university. I never thought about the possibility of speaking to someone from that religion.
Mm.
And what happened was that I was invited to join a group. The group was a group of Jews who are students at the Hebrew University and of Christians who were theology students
Hmm.
who knew Hebrew and came for 1 year to study at the Hebrew University. And I was maybe 6 months after taking a class about Christianity given by Professor Marcel Dubois, who was a very special character. He was at the same time a philosophy professor and a Dominican monk. So he gave within the Department of Philosophy a course about the fundamentals of Christianity. So when I came to this group, I had many good questions to ask, and it
Hmm.
was very interesting intellectually to hear
Hmm.
how real people wrestle with, the mysteries, three equal one, the dual nature of Jesus, all of that. And so for maybe 3 years, I came, and I think I didn't miss even one meeting of this group. But it was for me some kind of intellectual fun. I
Hmm.
enjoyed the conversations; they were interesting for me, and that's it. Then after some time, I reflected and realized that my own prejudices changed. First, referring to Christians, and then to Christianity, and
Hmm.
this led me to understand the power of such conversations. When you go deep, when you touch the levels that have existential value for the participants, you meet the other in their depth, which is also, it's always positive, always inspiring.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
one. And then, as I said before, you discover that those people who were demonized before, you
Hmm.
have things in common with them.
Hmm.
Uh,
They're people.
they are people,
It's
exactly,
so
exactly.
it's repeatedly, peace group after peace group that I speak with. It's just sad and amazing that the realization that the other is just
Human.
another human
Yeah.
is surprising. It's really sad. And to those of us who are used to it and don't grow up with such interactions that do cause such deep prejudice, we're shocked
Yes.
that others are shocked. And it's again, as I said, it's surprising and yet provides hope, because you see it time and again, that just meeting, it's not some scientific formula that only a couple people can come to. It's just a social interaction of getting to know the other, and whoa, they're like me.
Yes.
Yeah, we have differences here or there, but we're essentially all one.
Yes.
It's like I said, it provides both surprise and hope that, we just need to get folks meeting each other,
Yes. Yes. And the hope comes from the fact that you can see how quickly the change happens. You just give the people the opportunity to have a conversation with someone else. You put politics aside, because politics is not a bridging factor, at least not here. And then they discover each other.
Yeah.
They look each other in the eye. That's it.
Obviously you live there and you see all this stuff happening. So did you, I know you were very insulated, but was the conflict conversation topic while you were growing up?
Yes, yes, but I mean, not a real conversation, because it was quite clear what the story is.
Uh-huh.
And I think it is more challenging uh, for I mean, if you take wide audiences in both societies, and this is the most challenging, and it is still challenging, even for our people who are friends and care for each other. It's challenging for them to discuss historical narratives and political issues, and I don't think it's a must. Many of them can do it, and it's a bonus, but those who can't can avoid it. It's okay, because for me the most important element is the friendship. If I can say that I have a friend in the other community to for whom I care, and I want his life or her life to be better, and if they lose their job, I will make efforts to try and help them find one, which happens. Um, and if they are mourning, I would come and comfort them. And if they are celebrating a wedding or something, I will, and they invite me, I will come happily. I think this is more important in the strong bond on everyday life is more important than whether we agree or disagree, or maybe even whether we can talk or not.
Yeah. Well, again, everything depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And obviously, those are all terrific things. And but moving the needle toward more formal abilities of both people's getting together, other people, have additional goals as well. But
No, we also have these additional goals, but we decided to work through the civil society, through the grassroots.
right.
And when you look from this angle, uh, the big picture of relations between the peoples will change when you have enough grassroots people who participate.
Yeah, the
You
momentum.
cannot expect the big picture to change when you have a few tens of thousands who have
Right,
who had the chance to meet the other in all organizations.
right,
You
right,
need to get to a scale of hundreds thousands.
right,
Aim for 1 million people who met each other.
right,
And
right.
then I think you will see the big picture change. Because I have friends that maybe I disagree with about the historical narratives,
Hmm.
but we can work an agreement in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, hell, the just within amongst ourselves, if you look at, all the Jewish opinions about Jews, you know,
Yes,
there's enough opinions to go around and enough strong disagreements, et cetera, et cetera.
yes,
And then when you try to get the two peoples together, of course, it's very complicated.
yes.
And
But I think
but it's a first step for sure.
it's the same trend that is needed.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
the same internal movement that someone has when they learn to meet, let's say, a Jew who learn to meet a Muslim, the same movement happens when someone from the right meets
Mhm.
someone from the left.
Yes.
I think it's the same. It's not about looking for agreements. It's
Hmm.
about uh, finding ways to disagree and remain friends.
Right.
And when you have disability, it's also easier to develop agreements.
Right. I have to ask you because coming from where you were, from what you were saying, very insular, um, kind of one viewpoint, the Jewish viewpoint, at least of the folks that you lived with and grew up with, uh, what was it like the first time hearing from Palestinians their narratives and what they thought? I would imagine now that's shocking. That's what was that like?
Yeah, so yeah, as you say, it was shocking in the beginning,
Hmm.
and I was at first busy rejecting it.
Hmm.
Uh, but then I remember reaching to a point that I say, okay, I'm against it, but I have friends who will be happy if it happens.
Right.
Uh, so
But
it was
what
like,
about like I would imagine with your empathy that listening about house demolitions or things or people on their side who have been
yes,
killed. Uh, when you lift the veil of the lack of knowledge and then someone lets you in and they're not talking about little things, they're talking about very dramatic, ugly things. I'm wondering what you thought.
so again, it changed from hearing it as an accusation,
Hmm.
which leads to defense. No,
Hmm. Sure.
if it happened, then it's justified.
Hmm.
Um, and you move on to empathy. I mean,
Hmm.
usually I don't know what happened, but if someone lost the brother
Hmm.
or their leg or their house
Hmm.
or just had a neighbor who lost,
Hmm.
they're sad, and I can sympathize with this sadness. And
Hmm. Sorry.
even if the guy was deserved what he got, still the relatives suffer.
Right. It's I mean, I note it in myself when I hear the other narrative, and it's hard. It's really hard for so many reasons to hear, but necessary.
Yes, but also I think we need, again, what I said before, we need to develop the ability um, to understand that we don't have to have the same description of the reality or of the
Right.
history or
Right.
the narrative or the same understanding. We just need to be able to listen to the other and focus on building the shared future that we should, that we have to, that otherwise, I mean, if we will not coexist peacefully, we will both suffer like we do.
Right. Thoroughly agree. So I'd have to say, thanks so much, Yehuda.
Thank you.
What the information we talked about, I think, is very important for people to hear and to learn from. I appreciate your time. Next week on November 15th, we'll be speaking with Harvey Price, the founder and executive director of Peace Drums. Mr. Price recently retired after 40 years as an associate professor of music at the University of Delaware. Peace Drums is a unique interfaith initiative promoting peace among Jewish, Muslim, and Christian youth living in the Galilee region of Israel. Its goal is building trust, a trust that will continue into the future and will touch many people. It introduces peacemaking and reconciliation through the shared activity of a dynamic steel drum band. As Jewish, Israelis, and Palestinian children play steel drums together, they've worked on reconciliation and been able to perform throughout the world. We hope you'll join us, and for now, we pray that everyone someday will live in peace, shalom, and salam.